Ikamoana, Kamona Hon, Ti Kaleva Lu, Ikahikina, Ayakala, Eala.
5 o'clock alarm bell rings, same thing every day. Well, answer the phone, I'm not home, I'm already on my way. Out the door, down the street, got to keep me on my feet. I got coffee, I got donuts, in the office down the street. And the fat hat lady's faking a heart attack. And my manager yelling at me, say, can't give her money back. Blank call, the notice overdue. And that's just one more thing I gotta do till I get off the earth. Till I get off the earth. 12 o'clock, the lunch bell rings. Same thing every day. You better answer the phone in the proper tone. Yes, sir, whatever you say. Right on time, on the time. Got to keep me on my feet. I got contracts, I got lawyers in the office down the street. Jam is backing up more than I can stand. Things ain't working out the way I had them planned. Ain't on the meeting, just a drink or two. That's just one more thing I gotta do till I get off the earth. Till I get off the earth. Till I get off the earth. Till I get off the earth.
Good morning, everyone. And we just take it over to Heather. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Thank you, Hank, for bringing us together in this virtual space. Hello. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us again today for the next installment of the Virtual Rising Voices 8 meeting. Today, focusing on food systems, our new sort of topical focus within Rising Voices. I'm Heather Lazarus from the National Center for Atmospheric Research, and together with Julie Maldonado from the Livelihood Knowledge Exchange Network, LICAN, and with support from Olohana Foundation and Lomikai Media, we will have our conversation with you all today. As you're joining us in the YouTube channel, please go ahead and introduce yourself, say hi. We have the auto transcription on, recognize the hilarity and limitations of that. A wee bit of background for anyone who is new to the Rising Voices program. It facilitates intercultural relational-based approaches for understanding and adapting to extreme weather and climate events, climate variability, and climate change. The program brings together Indigenous and other scientific professionals, tribal and community leaders, and environmental communication experts, students, educators, and others from around the world. We acknowledge the inherent value of Indigenous knowledge systems and Indigenous science, adaptive practices and processes, honoring them equally with Earth sciences. And you will have heard me say this at every beginning of all of our meetings, but we can't underscore it enough, so it's worth repeating. In this way, we advance collaborations that bring together Indigenous and Earth sciences in partnership to support adaptive and resilient communities through sharing scientific capacity, as well as really providing opportunities for Indigenous students and early career scientists through scientific and community mentoring. So thank you to Althea Walker and Mary Beth Yeager for leading the food systems, co-facilitating this conversation on food systems today. A huge thank you for your leadership in this. In these virtual sessions, we have the opportunity to speak and engage with each other in the breakout sessions, which we will all shift to shortly. And please keep in mind that we want these conversations to be happening in conversation with other topics from Rising Voices and with the experiences and topics that are salient in all of your lives at the moment. So as I mentioned, shortly, I'll turn things over to Julie, and then we'll have a wee bit of background from Althea and Mary Beth. And then we will move into breakout sessions. At the end of the breakout session time, you will be prompted to go back to the YouTube channel where you will be able to see sort of a conversation of presenting back from each of the breakout sessions. If you need help in the meantime, please email HELP at lomikai, LOMIKAI.com. Thank you. And with that, I'll hand things over to Julie.
And thank you, Hank, for the welcome, and to Heather for kicking us off here. Thanks, everyone, for joining today. This is, moving along in this virtual Rising Voices series. And while we've done several of these working group sessions, this is our first Rising Voices working group session ever really focused specifically on food systems. It's always been a large part of all of the working group conversations, and today we get to have a really specific focus on critical food systems and thinking about the importance of the changes occurring in food systems today. We want to be thinking about how science and sovereignty are responding to these changes, and also asking ourselves, what is your vision for collaborations and partnerships that are needed? Thinking about how can Rising Voices as this boundary organization support such collaborations, weave together the really kind of often separated policy, science, and practice strands to support food systems in a good way. And so, really continuing to build from what emerged from the previous Rising Voices working group discussions over the past few months, looking at phenology and community relocation, site expansion, energy systems, water systems. And today the food system session is building off of these, as well as the food systems panel session that happened a couple weeks ago on September 3rd. That's really helping to inform today's conversation. And with that, I'm honored to turn it over to Althea Walker, who serves one of the facilitators for this, for the food systems panel and for today. And she's going to provide some background information from that panel session that happened a couple weeks ago. So over to you, Althea.
Right. Thank you, Julie. Back on December 3rd, we hosted a food systems panel discussion in which we had 4 individuals who joined us, and we had the privilege of sitting down with Dr. Michael Johnson, who is a research associate at the Native American Agriculture Fund, Becky Webster, an assistant professor at the University of Minnesota Duluth, Mr. Kaya Deerenwater, he is a community garden manager for the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, and then lastly with Chief Sherelle Parfait Dardar, who is a traditional chief of the Grand Kayu Dulac Band of Biloxi, Chitimacha, Choctaw. So we have the privilege of sitting down with them, certainly learned a lot from them, and Mary Beth will actually provide us a summary of that discussion, but we just wanted to send a huge thank you to those 4 individuals for sharing their knowledge and time with us. Mary Beth?
Thanks, Althea. It was an excellent conversation. I would definitely recommend anybody to take a listen to it. We talk from anything from about what does it mean to what kind of trade's going on, or connecting to the land, science, and tribal intellectual rights, urban conversation around being urban Indian, and what does that mean being connected back to the land. There's some really yummy recipes at the end of the conversation, so it's definitely worth listening through that. I'm very hungry afterwards. And also too, with that is a theme that you'll see within the conversation is this importance of relational accountability to each other, to our non-human kin, to the land, and then also to our spiritual connections that we have. And I'd like to just quickly summarize. They all gave a takeaway, and so I'll summarize their takeaway that they had. So Dr. Webster talked about, as Indigenous people, we've been dealing with colonization for so long, and so a lot of us did lose our knowledge or ways or how to connect back to the land, and that happened, and it's going to be okay. It's okay. It's not going to be, not that it's going to be okay, but that it is okay that there are people who have been able to hold this knowledge for generations, and so to reach out to them and to learn from them And then to go along with that, Dr. Johnson talked about the importance, he kind of used the Nike quote, famous quote of just do it, of getting out there and just doing it, just helping grow growing the food. It might be a little planter in your backyard, if you have a backyard, or on your, wherever you live, or if you live in an apartment, if you have a balcony, or maybe it's indoor, or ways of doing agriculture, just different things of getting out there and going back to what Dr. Webster said, of like reaching out and learning from people in a good way. And then Mr. Deerenwater talked about that after the conversation of the importance of remembering that we're all relatives and we're all friends, and like that importance of building and continuing those relationships. And so he emphasized that. And I think that's one of the great things about Rising Voices is over these years of building these relationships with each other and being there for ourselves. And then Chief Sherrill asked everybody to please keep both people here in Louisiana and Texas and the tribal coastal communities there. At the time they were dealing with Hurricane Laura and the aftermath of that. And there's a lot of intersectionality between toxicity, environmental issues, being left out and erased from official recovery responses and stuff. And so continuing to remember our tribal communities that are facing these natural disasters and to keep them in your prayers. So that was a quick introduction. I realize I was talking a little fast, so I apologize. I'm very excited. Usually when I get excited, I start to get fast. But at this time, we'd like to transition to the breakout rooms. And so to do that, Julie's going to send out another email over the listserv for the Zoom link. So we're moving from this YouTube over to the Zoom link. And so if people can do that now, that would be fantastic. And we'll be back here to talk about the breakout rooms in a little bit.